Hey you guys, it's Carolyn from Homesteading Family, and today I'm going to show you how to make a dinner roll that is worthy of any holiday table, and that is a sourdough Parker House dinner roll. These are so good. They're not at all sour like some sourdough can be. They're just absolutely delicious, and you have got to try them. This is the recipe, and these are the rolls that are going to be on our table this Thanksgiving and this Christmas. They are amazing. Okay, and they're not that hard. Let's get started. All right, now the first step here is to feed your sourdough starter. We're starting with an activated starter, which means that you want to feed it about 2 to 3 hours before you're ready to use it. That just wakes it up and gets it ready to work for you. A great way to do this is just wake up in the morning, feed your starter, and then know that by mid-morning you'll be ready to start baking this. Okay, so now we want to take 1.5 cups of buttermilk. You want a cultured buttermilk. You're going to get that into a small saucepan. To that, you're going to want to add about 2 tablespoons of honey. Now, this is going to make such a lovely, soft dough. It is just so good. You're going to want to add 4 tablespoons of butter, and it can be cold and cut up because we're going to heat this up just enough to melt it all and incorporate it together. And you're going to want about 1/2 teaspoon of your good quality salt. We're just going to mix that all up. Now we're going to put this on a really low heat until it's all melted and mixed together really well and uniform. Now we don't want to bring this up over 100 degrees, otherwise we're going to have to wait for it to cool so that it doesn't injure our good yeast in our sourdough. We want to put it in at 100 degrees. So it's best to go ahead and take an extra minute or two and do this on a low, slow temperature. Okay, so now while that is coming slowly up to a melted and combinable temperature, we're gonna start adding the other ingredients, which is not very many. So you just wanna take a bowl and add your sourdough starter. And you wanna add to that 2 eggs. We're just going to want to mix this really well to incorporate it. Okay, so now this is completely melted and completely combined. So it's time to go ahead and add that to our sourdough mixture here. Now you want to again make sure that this is not over that 100 degree mark. If you need to use a thermometer, then go ahead and do that. You don't want your sourdough to not be happy. You don't want to burn it and kill it. Okay, so we're just going to mix those ingredients together really well, just until they're really well incorporated. Now we're ready to start adding our flour. Now adding a flour to any bread mixture can be tricky. You need to add the right amount, and that nobody can tell you what that right amount is in a recipe. The reason for that is because your kitchen may be a lot drier than my kitchen, and believe me, it makes a real difference as to how much flour you need to add. So you want to add it until the bowl comes clean. You can start with about 2 cups here of whatever flour you're using. The total amount is probably going to be closer to 3.5 cups, but you just never know. If you're not sure how to tell if your bread has enough flour, check out my free bread making series. I go into this in depth and some of the tests that you really need to master for bread making. So I've put about 2 cups in here now. And this is the kamut flour. You can use a mixture of flours. Like I said before, you can use an all-white flour. And I'm just gonna stir to incorporate this. I love my dough whisk for this. It's one of my favorite tools when working with bread. But you could use a wooden spoon. You could use anything that you have on hand. Okay, now obviously at this stage it doesn't have enough flour in it. It's still very battery. It's not like a bread dough. So I'm gonna go ahead and add more flour here. Now I want to mix this up until I have a stiff batter that is still tacky, but but the bowl comes clean. So you can see it's starting to hold together in a lump now, and it'll probably absorb a little bit more flour, but I'm gonna let it do that while I knead. So I'm gonna take a decent amount of my flour. I'm gonna start with about half a cup. I'm gonna put that onto my breadboard here. Spread it out. Now you could certainly do the kneading in a mixer if you would prefer. I like to do it by hand. I just like to feel the dough. I feel like I can tell, tell when it's ready a lot faster by touching it. Okay, now I'm going to move on to using my hands here. I'm gonna start kneading with my hands. Right now it's a little bit sticky still, but it's just gonna accept that flour and keep kneading that in. Now I don't want it to absorb any more flour than is necessary because I don't want it to be stiff or heavy. I just want a good quality dough here. And I'm looking to knead for about 5 minutes or until it becomes smooth and elastic. If you've taken my free training, you'll understand what I mean by doing the window pane test and passing the window pane test. That is a way of telling if your bread is smooth and elastic. I'll put a link to that in the description so you guys can go check that out. It's really useful to know how to read your dough instead of reading a recipe, because nobody can tell you the conditions in your kitchen exactly. No cookbook author can replicate your kitchen with your flour and your yeast. So it's really good for you to have the skill to actually know how to read your dough and make bread and bread products that way. Okay, so this is probably going to take about 5 minutes by hand-ish to get to that smooth and elastic where it passes that window pane test. Okay, so I have been kneading for probably about 4 minutes now, and it is nice and elastic of a dough. It's very soft and feels wonderful. This has just got a wonderful texture to this dough, and it feels so good to work with. The dough at this point is still a little tacky. It's a little bit sticky, but it's not falling apart, and it's not so sticky that it's just holding onto my hands. So we know that I'm at a good spot to move forward. Okay, so that's probably the hardest part of this whole project. Now I have a bowl here that has been generously buttered on the inside. I'm gonna go ahead and set my dough into it, turn it over once or twice so it can get some butter all the way around it. And then I'm gonna cover this with a tea towel and let it sit in a warm place for about 2 hours or until it's about doubled. Okay, now I have one ready here that has been sitting for about 2 hours. It's maybe a little more than doubled while I've been waiting to film, but it is ready to take the next step. So you can see it's risen really nicely, and we're gonna go ahead and deflate it now. You can punch it down like that. That's always a fun part. And we're just gonna scoop it out of its bowl. I'm gonna put it right back here onto this cutting board, making sure that I have a little bit of flour on there because it is still just a little bit sticky, remember? Now look at the texture of this dough. It is so nice. You can just see how smooth and silky it is to work with. It is so wonderful. Now at this point, now that I've punched it down, it's great to give it about a 5-minute rest so that it just has a chance to relax after being punched down. This just helps those gluten strands to be more manageable when you go to form your rolls. Now, in the meantime, I'm gonna go ahead and get a cast iron pan and get that really well buttered. You're gonna want a 12-inch cast iron pan, or you can use a 9x13 casserole pan, anything that you would like to cook on. You can even use a cookie sheet if you'd like. Just make sure whatever it is you decide to use is really, really well buttered. All right, now we're ready to go ahead and divide up our dough into 12 pieces. Now, if you really want to be a perfectionist, do this with a scale. Get your total amount, divide that by 12 and divide it into that amount. Or you can do the way I do, which is just to go ahead and cut it into 4 pretty even quarters here, and then to divide each one of those quarters into 3 pieces. Okay, now you can adjust a little if you see that one is a little bigger than another. This one might be a little bigger. And we just want to form those into nice balls. Now, you want to stretch the skin of the roll tight at the top and kind of pinch it together at the bottom. That'll give you a nice smooth top to your rolls instead of one with a bread seam running right down it. So you just kind of pull it around and pinch it down at its bottom, just like that. Okay, and then you're gonna place this around right into that pan. Now they are gonna grow to touch together and they're gonna have those nice edges where you pull them apart. Oh, these are so good. I just love these and they look so good. And there's nothing like setting a pan of these warm onto a table. They just kind of have that wow factor with a cast iron pan. I love that. But you have a few different options. If you're taking these to a holiday event, you can underbake these and then warm them up at the last minute. That's a really good way to go. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and just make all 12 of these rolls. Now, in case you need to know, this recipe doubles, triples, even quadruples really well. Obviously, you'll need more pans and you'll need to build up your sourdough starter to have that much starter to be able to do it. But it is a great recipe, it doubles really well. Especially if you have a large mixer. One of my favorites is my Bosch mixer that can handle large amounts of dough really easily and just make the kneading part of this and the flour adding part of this super easy. Okay, we're gonna get these all done. Okay, so now we have all of our rolls set into the pan here and we're ready to go ahead and cover these up with a tea towel and set them in a warm place until they've risen almost double. That's gonna be about 2 hours if you have a nice warm location, but you want them to come almost up to the sides of the pan that you're working in. That will make sure that they're tall enough to have some great oven spring when you put them in the oven and rise even more. Okay, now here is a pan of rolls that has risen for about 2 hours and you can see that it's risen nice and big. It has gone ahead and filled in all of those spaces, so it's kind of one big lumpy mass, but they're gonna pull apart really easily. So now we wanna make sure we get our oven preheated to about 350 degrees. Now I've got some melted butter here. And I want to just lightly brush that over these rolls before they go in the oven. This is about 4 tablespoons of butter. I'm going to use about 2 tablespoons right now for this. And then when they come out of the oven, I'm going to go ahead and brush some more right on them. All right, then as soon as that is done, we are ready to slide these into that 350 degree oven. Now we want to go ahead and bake those for about 35 to 40 minutes. You'd be surprised how much people's ovens vary in terms of the actual temperatures that they cook at. So that's gonna vary a little bit. You're gonna wanna watch for a nicely browned top and a lightly hollow sounding sound. If you don't feel confident in your ability to tell if your bread is done or not, or your dinner rolls, you can put a thermometer into the interior of one of the sides. If you just kind of go from the side, you can't even see the hole. It's not real obvious. And you're looking for between 200 and 205 degrees Fahrenheit on the interior of your bread to tell that it's done. Now, if you want to take these kind of not completely baked and warm them up at the last minute, that is a great way to do that. If, let's say, you're taking dinner rolls to a holiday event or something like that, you can cook these until they are completely set but not really browning yet. I guess it'd be about 20 minutes. That's probably going to be more in the 180 internal temperature range. And then you can pull them out, cool them, keep them even till the next day, nice and cool, maybe in the refrigerator, and then set them back in the oven to finish off. Now it'll take a little bit longer, but you want to then get them up to that 200, 205 degrees. That is just the best way to make your rolls ahead, but still have them taste like they're fresh out of the oven. Okay, I'm gonna get these into the oven. All right, look at these finished rolls. Don't they look so good? As soon as they came out of the oven, while they were still hot, I went ahead and buttered the top of them, and it just gives them a wonderful top texture. Now let's go ahead and pull one out of here. You can see it just kind of pulls apart. Can you see how wonderful that looks? It is so great. You can open these guys right up. Look at how light and fluffy they are. And they are sweet. They are not sour like traditional sourdough is. They have this lovely texture to them, but they have the health benefits of the sourdough. Put these hot on a holiday table or your regular dinner table if you want to treat your family to a real treat. And melt some butter right on them when they're warm, and oh, these things are absolutely amazing. Hey, don't forget to go ahead and jump over and join that free training that I have on knowing the best tips for making great bread anytime, be light, sliceable, and fluffy in your own kitchen. I'll put the link down in the description. Oh, you guys have got to try this. This is so good. Take care, you guys. Goodbye.